This morning I am here with former Councilman Don Vardeman. I appreciate your time this morning. I thought it would be interesting to kind of look at your journey of being a council person for the last couple of years. When you were first thinking about running for office and doing that election and coming on board, what were some of the aspirations, some of the things you really were focused on wanting to accomplish and do?
There were quite a few. One of the big ones was trying to get our water treatment plant outside of the city. I was hoping to improve our streets. Really, it was kind of comical. I was running on some of the same things that the people in the last election were running on, and you know, it's sad in a way that 2 years later we still have the same problems that I was talking about. So you know, that's why bureaucracy is a bureaucracy. It's just ongoing sometimes.
All right, so that's an interesting point to start with. So you get into office, and I think some other people that were, I think Winky Wardlaw was in that initial deal with you, and I think that's when Marty, no, he was rerunning, I think, or was he also running?
He was running.
Okay, so there was a lot of turnover, and y'all came in with a lot of aspirations and thought. And as you said, you got introduced to bureaucracy. Explain to my audience what that looks like.
Well, a prime example, I think, is the idea that we could get the water treatment plant out of San Angelo. Of course, with the radium that's in the Hickory Aquifer, I was very not afraid, but tentative about having you know, something like that within our city limits, and still am up to a point. Not as much because of the radiation point of it, but because of the chemicals that are being used and some of those sort of things. What I found once I was in there and up and running is that snowball had started at the top of the hill and was almost at the bottom by the time I got in there. It just wasn't economically feasible, and as a responsible person that was running to help the people of San Angelo, you can't stick your chest out even if you have 4 votes, in my opinion, and say, okay, we're going to spend another $100 million and move this thing. Like I said, it's just not economically feasible. And so by the time some of us were elected and put in there, it would have been such a burden on our constituents, on the people of San Angelo, to do what we wanted to do, that we just basically had to back off and accept things the way they were.
And that's when the Hickory Aquifer pipeline and all of that was being connected. The cost of all that, I don't think that's even begun to be reflected in our water bill yet. Have they figured out what the cost is going to be on that?
Well, and that's another thing as far as bureaucracy goes. If somebody brings something to the council, whether it's a citizen or a council person, it has to be tasted and smelled of and thought about and pondered upon, and then you hire a consultant, and you have to wait for the results, and then you have to talk about it, think about it, and then eventually vote on it. And so as far as the water portion of it, it's being studied and should be coming to an end. The study should be coming to an end and should be talked about probably in the next 2 maybe months, something like that. But,
amazing.
But they a consultant was brought on to take a look at the fees and future items as far as infrastructure and some of those sort of things. So.
Do you have any idea what we spend annually on consultants?
It varies. You know, it depends on what the hot topic of the day, and I do consulting, and so I'm one of those guys that I do my best not to really put it to anybody that I'm working for, but sometimes it's needed.
Well, true.
I.e. our streets. I mean, there's nobody in San Angelo that can realistically say, okay, the base of XYZ streets are worse than the base of ABC streets without having the proper equipment to more or less see under the asphalt and know what's going on. Now, everybody knows that Bell Street, North Chadbourn, Southland, those sort of things are really deteriorating, but to prioritize those things as far as digging them up completely versus just hot topping them is what the consultant's going to be telling us. So my point to this is there's no real average on the consulting fees. It depends on what's going on, along with the fact that some of them are viable. I voted for that one. Most of the other ones I talked against and voted against because I didn't think that it was a viable concern, that our own employees couldn't have given us a good feedback and a good way to go.
Seems like as far as on the roads that it's the number 150 million been kicked around as far as what we would really need to have in the bank to completely put our streets and roads in the condition that they need to be. Looking at spending, is it only 4.5 million a year? And we're going to be doing an 8-year rotation. It sounds like mathematically that's leaving a lot of streets that are still not going to be touched.
Well, here again, the 4.5 million I really count as a win because I had to fight very hard. We went during my tenure from 750,000 to 4.5 million, which is a start. And what I basically was working on is anything beats nothing. And what I was trying to do is to have the monies taken to have our own crew that I think would be much more economically feasible than hiring people to come in and do this stuff. Plus on the maintenance side of it, it's just like our parks. We take half-cent sales tax monies and develop new parks, but we don't put anything in the budget to maintain those parks. And if we do the same thing on our streets, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. As far as the streets go, one of the things that I tried to do and could not get traction on was to take a portion of our half-cent sales tax, which you can legally do for 4 years, and put that all toward our streets.
What was the pushback on that? You said you couldn't get traction.
It addressed a variety of different things. Some of it was economic development, taking from economic development to put toward our streets. My contention on that was, right or wrong, is, if you have somebody that comes to San Angelo to build a large business, if they hit one of our streets and they practically hit the curb because of the rub board on there, they're not going to want to come to San Angelo anyway. So for the 4 years, I thought it was viable to take it from the parks, from those other areas that our half-cent sales tax are going toward, and develop it strictly for the streets after the priorities from the consultant comes back as far as the ones that need to be done. Make that money go as far as it possibly could, and then perhaps have a bond issue for our own crew, not for the employees, but for the actual machinery that it would take to have a crew like that.
So does Shane Kelton's group, do they just run kind of a skeleton crew to go patch potholes, or and we really do not have any equipment? Is that the scenario?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, basically that's it. We even contract out, like if there's a pipe cut, a trench cut in our streets to have that filled in.
Wow. So in making that decision that it wouldn't be viable to use that half-cent sales tax money. Who made that decision? Is it the city council, or is that the city staff that's?
That's answer to that's yes. I mean, the council is the one that would make the ultimate decision. The staff has to do the background as far as what it would take. Of course, the voters would be the one that would ultimately decide, because our half-cent sales tax is voter-driven. It was put in place and the voters approved it, so to change it, it has to go back to the voters. I think that was probably one of the qualms, probably more of staff and of some of the council also, is that they were afraid that it would be a backlash and they'd lose the income from the half-cent sales tax for anything.
Interesting, because the public sure has been crying out for their roads.
And there again, I believe that our people are smart enough and everything to know that we need those streets. They would vote for that, along with the fact that a sales tax is a whole lot more equitable, because the people that use our streets don't only live in San Angelo.
That's right.
You know, if a trucker stops and buys a hamburger somewhere, you know, a Diet Coke at a convenience store, then he's going to pay a portion of our streets through the sales tax.
That's absolutely right. And all of the people that come to visit our community, right, and the rodeo crowd, and absolutely, all of the different things, even Easter Fest that pulls in things, right, people. Right. So anyway, what were some of the challenges besides the road issue that you ran into during your tenure on the council?
There were a lot of them. You know, things as I don't know if you call it simple, things like our dog pound, which is animal shelter. I'm sorry, it's not a dog pound. That's my let you up ring, and the dump's not.
That was the old terminology back when, right, we were kids.
Right. And the dump's not the dump; it's the
landfill.
Yes, yes. So anyway, the animal shelter was having a lot of problems, and we think that we have those resolved. We were euthanizing far too many animals, in my opinion, and the public wasn't given adequate access to our animal shelter. Through Bob Solis and James Flores, I think we have those problems addressed and taken care of. The water situation, it's I think headed in the right direction. God
sure has been helping a lot on that.
Yeah, prayers answered, let me tell you.
Amen.
I had one friend that got 6 inches, and he said, I should have just put how fast and how much in my prayer. I forgot to do that. So his place got flooded pretty bad.
Oh, my.
Anyway, the water situation, I was against the catching the water and impounding it from Red Arroyo. To me, I think that we need to be more thinking out of the box, because it still has to rain just like for our lakes for us to be able to catch that. Plus, I'm worried and concerned about the people downstream because that goes to the river. So I was against that. I was for the...
Where does that stand right now? Is it still on the table a little bit? Or?
Yeah, they're having a consultant.
There's another study. It's about how thick the base of that they'd have to do, and the cost, whether that'd be viable. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the numbers were getting astronomical on some of it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, just once again, another consultant, another study. A consultant is viable for the next thing I'm going to talk about, and that's reclamation of our water. We send about 7 million gallons of water away a day, and if we could reclaim half, and the figures show that we could probably reclaim 5 of the 7 million, that would be a tremendous shot in the arm for our water supplies. One of the things I didn't realize, and I think a lot of people don't realize, is that in our lakes we lose more to evaporation than we ever do to usage. And so until we come up with some alternative
Underground storage somewhere.
right, you know,
Yeah.
something that's different than what we're doing now, as we grow, and it's not only San Angelo, it's West Texas. As we grow, we're going to continue to fight these problems.
Wow. What are some of the things that are still on the table that you were passionate about or working on that are still just kind of hung?
Well, like we talked about, some of the big things are the things we've discussed. You know, water usage, infrastructure. As far as we still have a lot of not a lot. We still have some 2-inch water mains. The figures,
2-inch water mains?
right?
Wow.
Supplying homes in San Angelo.
Wow.
The estimates were really mind-boggling also, as far as our water line infrastructure and how much water is actually lost to leaks before it ever gets to the end user. So you know, they were saying figures as high as 20% of our water is lost in our piping systems. So you know,
That's
infrastructure, yes. And here again, you're talking about millions upon millions of dollars. Well, one of the things that I was proud of with the school district driving reevaluation and reappraisals of the properties, all the government entities get additional dollars without going up on taxes. And what I was proud of was that we use those for our employees and things like our streets. Something that, in my opinion, would give back to our constituents and our taxpayers for some of the extra money that they were having to pay.
Have we increased the number of employees with our city?
Not substantially. What my big concern, which once again I was successful in getting done, was we had people that were and I keep using this phrase that when I was on the council, were in the ditches at 2 o'clock in the morning in ice water, making sure that our water supply was coming to our homes. And those were the people that were basically getting poverty wages. And so one of the things that the first year I was there we were able to do was to bring them up to just barely a living wage. We brought the bottom up to about $21,000 a year, which is something that you can, it's terribly tight, but you could raise a family on. Where before, some of those people were at $15,000. And so, you know, I feel very good about that. And in the first year, what we also did is at the top levels, we didn't give them raises so that we'd have more money to fund that.
What are some of the challenges you still see? Let's go with that. What are some of the challenges you still see before our city that need to be dealt with?
Well, it's the same ones like I was talking about when I started, you know, and the same ones the candidates just ran on. I mean, we have street problems. Everybody that drives knows that.
All right. Well, let me rephrase the question then. If those are still the key issues, what is it going to take to solve these problems so everyone that campaigns doesn't continue to campaign on the same issues? Because nothing's changed.
Well, you know, you have to have a staff and a council that the majority can agree on a solution, and that hasn't happened. I thought I had a good solution with the half-cent sales tax. Evidently, I didn't. I couldn't get it voted on or brought forward. So,
did you see a lot of? You hear the talk, I've got to have 4 votes. Did you see a lot of power play and work along that lines where, you know, like you say, if you didn't have enough people on your team or your side or your mindset, your thoughts on a particular project, it wasn't going to go anywhere.
Well, and that's just the nature of the beast. I mean, it's like I said when I ran, and of course it was the same thing on the school board when I was there. You can have the best idea in the world, if you can't sell it to 3 other people, it makes no difference. And so, you know, when you're talking about something like the half-cent sales tax, it's not only economics, it's also emotions, because you know you're picking on people's pet projects, so to speak, economic development parks, the things that it goes for, and so you have.
When do we say enough on parks and all the wonderful amenities? I mean, we have just literally over the last however many years have, I mean, bravo, we've done some awesome things, but isn't there a period, come a time when you have to take a pause and use that money in a different direction?
Well, and that's what I thought that time had came. You know, if like you're saying, you know, if anyone goes along the river, you know, it's beautiful down there. But of our 100,000 population, how many people go along the river?
Right.
I mean, and we have spent thousands and millions of dollars down there and continue to do that because that's what the money was dedicated for.
Wow. Now that you're a man of great wisdom, having come off of council, and you've actually been off now, what, 3 days? Yeah, so all this wonderful hindsight, you know, looking back, are there things that you see that you would have done differently that might have helped move things along better or accomplished more?
You know, I don't really have any regrets. I did the best I could. You know, and the thing about it is that the council is fluid. You know, every year it's going to change. So, you know, I think as people come and go, ideas and thoughts and priorities even change. And I've always said the best politicians in town are the city manager and the superintendent of schools, because they have to keep 4 people on their side through that movement, or they don't have a job. So, I mean, I think that there's not really anything that I could have done different that would have changed things.
In what you've shared, I do still sense and hear a little frustration. I think that's normal. Anyone would when, you know, when you don't feel like you accomplished everything you would have liked to have during your time there. What do you see needs to be changed in the way things maybe function so that things can move more quickly? Because you named off this whole process of, you know, you have an idea, you talk to that, and you know, and it takes forever for something to get accomplished, and a lot of times that's detrimental. By the time something's accomplished, it's no longer relevant or needed or whatever. And what can make the wheels move quicker?
I'm not sure. You know, it's just when you have so much that you have to go through. The funds are so regulated and so guarded, as far as being able to get monies to do the things that need to be done. You walk a tightrope between the needs of your constituents and San Angelo, and not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak, that you overburden those same people to get what they need. So it's a continual tightrope, and I think it's a democracy. I mean, you have to convince the people that are there as far as priorities go, and that just takes time.
Do you believe that the budget is streamlined, or does it have a lot of fat and pork or whatever in it?
I never really found a lot of places that could be cut. Basically, the money that comes back out of the vast majority of money that comes back out of the budget that's not used is for personnel. There's just, you know, so many times I know in parks and some of those areas there were as high as 7 and 8 people that they were short of, because with the oil boom at that particular time, they couldn't be hired, so those monies rolled back.
They're coming back now though, right?
Right, yeah, somewhat, but there's still a lot of need out there as far as their city goes in employees. So, but anyway, the money that comes back to the budget, the excess is usually from that. It's not from fat, and I'm very proud. I mean, I think it's a pretty lean group, and they try to use the council, as well as I think management, tries to use those dollars wisely.
With the Charter Review Committee working on potential changes to the charter, what are your thoughts on, okay, you just served a 2-year term. What are your thoughts about extending the terms to 4 years? Do you think that's a wise move, or do you have different ideas?
I think it's a good move. I think there should be consistency. You know, for instance, our county commissioners have 4-year terms, which I think are too long. Our school board trustees have 3-year terms, which I think is what we need, and our city has 2. If you come in, and fortunately, I was ahead of the curve, not to be bragging, but just because I worked for the city for so long, kind of knowing budgets and
Right.
taxing and those sort of things.
And you had served on the school
On
board
school
previously
board,
too.
right. And so I was ahead of the curve a little bit. If you come in, you know, off the street from, you know, the general population, your first year, you're learning and scrambling and asking questions and running as hard as you can just to figure out what you need to do and how you need to do it. So I think a 3-year term would really be optimal.
And what about another of the 8 items that they have is going from an elected chief to an appointed one?
I think that's definitely needed. I think the way they're going about it is wrong. I think that there needs to be a commission of people that would be as an intermediary between the city management and the council and the police chief. And I think that would take a lot of the fears away from the people, as far as, well, you know, the city manager is going to hire and fire this person at his will, which I don't even necessarily think is bad. I mean, we don't, I was a fire marshal, I wasn't elected. And if you really look at it, most of the chiefs, I worked 32 years as fire marshal. I can't think of a chief that was elected that had a rank above sergeant, which means he's a manager, but he probably doesn't know anything about budgets, maintenance, you know, some of the things that a good manager needs to know. And so I think that that's one of the downfalls of the elected system.
Anything else in particular that you would like to share?
Not other than, you know, every time I've ran and been elected, I've been humbled and flattered by it, and I appreciate it. I've never ran for anything other than to help San Angelo. I love San Angelo, and I think it's...
And you say it right, Stangelo.
San Angelo, that's right. When you grow up here, that's what it is.
That's right.
And, you know, I've never tried to do anything but help, and hopefully I have somehow.
Well, I know that we appreciate your service as I have sat and watched City Council in action for, I guess, a good 2 years now. It's really a very thankless job. And it takes a brave soul with a lot of courage and a little bit of time on their hands to step up and to take on that responsibility, for sure. So I appreciate your service to our community, and appreciate your time this morning, and hope you enjoy your official retirement now.
Thank you. I appreciate it.